All right, guys. Happy Wednesday. Live at 5. Josh Lewis and myself, Jeb Smith, here for our 48th live episode of the year. Wow. I just counted while we were on that little break there and trying to figure out how many we did. So 4 weeks we took off. Want to wish everyone a happy new year. Appreciate all the support throughout the year. For those of you who are new to the show, we're here to answer your real estate and mortgage related questions, try to give you some advice, answer them the best we can to help guide you through that home buying process. Again, Josh Lewis is with me, my local mortgage professional, longtime friend. Welcome to the show once again, Josh.
I'm amazed, Jeb. 48 episodes. That's 96 hours of insight and wisdom from Jeb, and having to look at these two ugly faces while you're listening to.
These people deserve a medal.
We need like filters or something to make us look better.
We could do that. I see that Instagram filter where it's like what you would look like if your face were perfect. So if we could just get that here and do a whole episode like it.
That's perfect.
Oh, fantastic. So, we always start the show or within the first couple minutes of the show talking about inventory. So we received news. There's not been a lot of news, right? I mean, it's the end of the year. You mentioned last week, a lot of Wall Street, a lot of the high profile net worth people are taking this time of the year off. So a lack of news, just around the board. But for the most part, housing, not really a lot reported. Pending home sales dropped 2.2%. Pending home sales, they say is a forward-looking indicator because it's less properties going into escrow. It's typical for this time of year. This is what we expect to happen. It's, the week before the end of the year. Not most people that are listing their homes aren't doing it during the holidays, especially that week in between, Christmas and now, even though this is, from November, it's a slow time in the market. You're going to see a similar report in January. It's normal, guys. It's completely normal. But here in Orange County, right? Reported every week. I tell you what's going on. Today we had all we have is 965 active listings on the market. Crazy. So 3.3 million people, single families, townhomes, condos, 965 homes. Lowest number I've ever seen. Here in Huntington Beach, we're at 78 homes. So, and we're over 200,000 people. So there's just not a lot of property on the market. One of the reasons pending home sales is going down, just a lack of things to buy. You're going to see that for a little bit of, some time, right? You're going to see some indicators look like the housing market is slowing, and it is slowing a little bit, but don't take that for anything more than, seasonality at the moment. Josh, thoughts on any of this stuff? Let's talk interest rates. Let's, just give them an update.
Well, let's talk about my favorite headline that came out this week. So the Wall Street Journal yesterday, the CaseShiller Index, it comes out every month. CaseShiller is probably the best index for nationwide housing prices. They pick the 20 biggest metro markets. And the most important thing about what Case-Shiller does different than other indexes is rather than a median price, which median price can be affected. Median home prices were really low in the 2008, 2009, because the only homes that were selling were the super cheap foreclosures. So it brought that median down. On the flip side, as the market goes up and you see more expensive homes, bigger homes selling, median can go higher. So median doesn't really mean anything to you. Case-Shiller uses a paired sales analysis. So they look at the same homes selling over time to calculate the actual rate of appreciation. So Wall Street Journal comes out with a fantastic headline yesterday. U.S. home price growth slowed again in October. So Jeb, you would think with a headline like that housing's just doing poorly. It slowed again. They can't move houses. So the headline is that it dropped from 19.7% annual appreciation to 19.1%.
Oh, what are we going to do?
Yet again. So you guys who have been waiting to get in on one of the dips, apparently you buy the dip when it dips down to 19.1% annual appreciation. So this is what we talk about here every week. Be really careful when you're reading headlines, reading news articles. Even the Wall Street Journal, which is pretty calm and tame and non-clickbaity by comparison, whatever wizard journalist they had writing that article concluded that 19.7 to 19.1 is a slowing, and it's slowing again. We've hinted at this and continue to say housing is going to slow next year. By no stretch of the imagination is it going to be slow. I would not be stunned if we sit here after 48 more shows this time next year and talk about how it slowed to the second highest level of appreciation on record after this year's highest level. That's not cheerleading for it. It's not wanting it to happen. Affordability is less than it was a year ago. Affordability will be lower a year from now than it is today because of that appreciation. So for all of you first-time buyers buying in at the $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 price points, it's problematic. You know, another 10% appreciation puts you $20,000 to $50,000 higher. So we're not sitting here rooting or grandstanding for higher prices or any of that. It's just a matter of we don't create the news or the numbers. We want to look at it, analyze it, and project going forward where it's likely to go. And Jeb, along those lines, you're a step ahead of me. I bookmarked Logan Mohatushamy's 22 forecast. I saw the bullet points of it, but I didn't dig too deep into it. Why don't you kind of go through what he's projecting? So just for you guys probably don't know, he's the economist for Housing Wire. Really smart guy, so smart that his brain moves too fast. So listening to him is a little bit difficult, but usually dead on with the numbers. So what was he throwing out for 22, Jeff?
You know, I wish I could post this up here and kind of go through it but it's paid content. So I pay to have a subscription, and I feel like that's probably a violation of what I pay for in order to post it out for the world to see. You know, it's worth noting. I mean, you know, a lot of the things that he talks about in there, and he goes back to, you know, the 1981 trend with regards to mortgage interest rates, right? I mean, something that you've talked about often, how we're still in a bull market for interest rates. One of the things he talks about in there is, you know, his projections for the 10-year. And he talks, you know, and he's pretty accurate on his forecast. I mean, he was pretty spot on this year. He's been pretty spot on for the last couple of years with regards to interest rates and where he sees, you know, housing supply and that sort of thing. And one thing he talks about is he doesn't really see interest rates going up, you know, much above I think his high side was 3.625. He does say his upper end range of mortgage rates is 3.375 to 3.625, and his lower end range, which I think is really important here, guys, because something you spoke about, Josh, 2.375 to 2.5%. He does think there's an opportunity for lower rates. Now, there's obviously a lot of factors in this thing. I mean, this is probably a 10 to 15 minute read, a lot more than we could probably go over here in the show and keep you guys entertained. But a lot of it has to do with you know, the forecast of the 10-year. And then he goes on to talk more. What does he talk about? He goes, let's see, talks about existing home sales. And, you know, he does predict, like a lot of the other economists out there, that we're going to have less sales than we did last year, but it's not going to be a number that is really going to make an impact with regards to housing. He's expecting less sales next year. And it's not necessarily because there aren't buyers out there. It's more of an affordability starts to come into play. And then in addition to that, you have a lot of moving parts, people wanting to move. There's not supply there for them to buy. It's not as simple as just putting your house on the market and finding another property for a lot of people out there, right? It's trying to figure out, can I sell my house and find another property that meets what I want, that is, you know, close to where I need it payment wise, and figure out how all these moving pieces work. It seems pretty simplistic when you look at it on paper. You just say, hey, well, I list my house and I find another property to sell. Not that easy, because if someone is competing against you, they don't have a property to sell, you're contingent upon selling your property, you're in a tough position against the rest of the market. And he doesn't necessarily go into the detail of that, but I'm telling you, as a real estate agent, it's something I encounter often, is that there are people out there that want to move, that you know, need that additional property, that additional space, that additional yard, whatever it is, but can't do it because of the position they're in, you know, financially, needing to sell property, a lack of it on the other side, so on and so forth. So I didn't really take any notes on this thing. I just kind of read over it. Josh kind of threw me on the spot here with it. But
you read it. You're supposed to photographic memory,
you know,
process
my
it, and
mind,
get ready to regurgitate.
dude, what I read like 30 seconds later is gone. Another thing he talks about is housing starts, new construction, not going to be where a lot of people want to see it with regards to building new property. Even then, you've got continued supply constraints on different factors that are going to play into the market. So there's a lot going on that's going to keep housing kind of, I wouldn't say, in between, the high and low side of what we've seen over the last year, 2 years in this trend, if you will. But I think you're going to continue to see a tough housing market. I mean, that's just me being realistic. It's not something I want to see, as you mentioned earlier. We're not here to cheer on the housing market. It's difficult. Like, I have a lot of buyers that I would love to put into property that have just struggled for one reason or another over the last 6 months. And if the housing market cooled a little bit, it would give a lot of them an opportunity. So I'm here rooting for some cooling. I just don't know how much cooling you're going to see.
I'll say this: my least pleasant conversations I have are to people who make good money, who have good credit, who are unable to buy. So we're in California. The cheapest areas of California are 3 to 350, unless you're really, really out in some of the desert communities out in San Bernardino, Imperial counties. Had 2 conversations this week with people that make decent money, $50,000, $60,000, and you run through the numbers and you're like, there literally is nothing in your market to buy. So short of being able to move to a more affordable part of the country, ownership is not an option. And we've talked here every week that ownership is essential for building financial security over the long haul. It's forced savings. It fixes your housing payment. You have some tax benefits. You benefit from appreciation, which we've seen over the last 2-3 years. Owners really benefiting from appreciation and renters not getting that benefit. If we look at the numbers. One of the figures we talk about often, homeowners have 44 times greater net worth than renters. So you understand that. You can get that pretty clearly. The median net worth for a renter is about $6,000 or $7,000. The average burial costs are higher than the net worth of the average renter. So I don't say that to scare people or make them feel bad. It's just for those of us who are on a track, the things that we've talked about. You're going to be located in your area. You have a stable family. You have a stable job. Buying a home as soon as it makes sense for your life stage and staying put, not taking a cash out, refinancing to lower rate, shorter term, attempting to pay that off is a key piece of your financial future. Imagine, like, most of the folks on here are 30, 35, 45, 50. Flash forward to 70 years of age. Most people don't retire at 65 anymore, at 70, 72, 73. Flash forward to 70 years of age and you're planning on retiring. What's the difference in how much you have to have saved in a 401k, in an IRA to retire if you have a housing payment versus not having a housing payment? And realizing you're going to have your taxes and insurance, and in some parts of the country that's still a fairly high expense. It's way, way less than renting. You don't want to be 70 years old and renting and seeing your housing costs go up every month. So I believe strongly, Jeb believes strongly, and nothing's going to change it, that if you want financial security, I'm not talking about being rich. This isn't about, being Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos. Most of us are never, all of us are never going to have that type of wealth. It's just a matter of achieving security so you don't have to worry about having a roof over your head when it comes time to retire.
No, good stuff. Good stuff, Josh. Got a couple familiar names here in the chat. So thank you guys for joining us. Jennifer Beeston's here. Also another mortgage professional YouTuber up in more Northern California than we are here. So thank you for joining us, Jennifer, and putting your insight into to the comments there. We also have some good questions coming in here, Josh. There's a couple here. I'm not going to necessarily answer them in the order they came in, but in the order that I feel like I want to answer them. How's that? So Alexandra came in with a question here at the end that I think is important, just because Biden has once again extended student loan forgiveness through May, I believe, or until May, one of the two. Either way, a couple more months. So the question here is, how are lenders accounting for the student loan payment pause currently on IBR and want to use that payment? So Josh, in this environment, no student loan payments are being paid. In fact, it's going to be 2 years. It's going to be 2 years in May, I believe, that they've been paused. So how does the lender look at that?
So you're gonna wind me up on another rant here. I'll try to avoid that part of the government stupidity and what they've allowed to happen with higher education, financing higher education, IBR payments, pushing off forbearance. So let's just talk about how the lenders handle it. A forbearance or a deferred payment is not acceptable for qualifying for a mortgage under any loan program. A zero IBR payment can be eligible. So don't get it wrong that a zero payment can't be used for some loan programs. Some won't use a zero IBR, but long way of looking at it, or short way of looking at it, FHA is going to use 0.5% of the loan balance. VA uses a calculation that's very similar to that. It ends up just less than 0.5%. Freddie Mac will let you use the IBR payment. Fannie Mae will let you use the IBR, documented IBR payment, or they'll use 1%. Freddie Mac uses 0.5%. Fannie Mae uses 1% of the loan amount in the absence of an IBR payment, a documented IBR payment. So if you're on an IBR plan, we've had this with a number of our clients, and the situation with that is you're going to have to document your IBR payment, which the problem is we've been in forbearance for so long that last year the major loan servicers didn't have you recertify your income and recalculate your IBR for the next 12 months. So when we ask for the document from your servicer that shows what your IBR payment is, most of them will say, hey, it expired or it needs to be recertified and renewed in July of 2021. Well, here we are at the end of the year and you didn't do it because you didn't have to, because it didn't matter. It was going to be zero regardless. What most of them will do, FedLoan is the easiest to work with. You reach out, you tell them I'm on an IBR, need documentation of what my IBR payment is and when it is good through. And in general, they're just pushing it off 12 months. So in the instance that we used, if you were at July of 2021 when you were supposed to recertify, they'll give you a document that says you're going to recertify in July of 2022, and we'll be able to use the previous IBR payment from when you were making payments. But the zero payment, a deferred or forbearance payment is never going to be able to be used. Every loan program, FHA, VA, Fannie, Freddie, USDA, they all use slightly different guidelines, but they've all gotten more flexible. So your worst case, in essence, is using 0.5% of the loan balance. Your best case is using your IBR payment to qualify.
There you go. Appreciate that answer. We got Richard Rivera seeing a couple short sales in Southern California. How could someone be upside down on a house with 12 to 20% appreciation this year? Here's what I would say. I've seen short sales. Like I saw one come on the market about a month and a half ago. It was a property right near me. I wanted to see it. Well, after talking to the agent, I realized it wasn't a short sale at all. He had actually entered it incorrectly. And I was looking at, I've seen a couple, in fact, that'll look short sales. And then I go look at the title record and figure out, there's absolutely no way they could be a short sale in these environments. So I would almost guess that a lot of these are entered incorrectly. I don't think you're going to see a short sale in this environment. Just because of, like you said, where equity has gone, where appreciation has gone. Even if you missed payments over the course of the last 2 years here in Southern California, your property has gone up more than that. I can assure you of that in most cases. So, it's one of those things that I wouldn't necessarily take at face value without knowing the details on it. Because I actually think that can happen in the last year of appreciation that we've had. Let's see here. Christopher says, what do you expect for the spring as far as inventory and days on market? Also, any stats on home starts? So the spring, I expect inventory to pick up. It's typical. It's seasonal. We start to see it about the first week in February. This year's probably, I would guess it's probably going to start a little bit sooner than that. You're going to start to see some inventory. I'm having conversations with potential sellers, with sellers. Whether or not I get the listing is another question, but these people are sellers that are going to put their homes on the market. So a lot of them are starting to ask the question, when should I do it? And my answer is always the same. Right now, what's going on. You know what your competition is. You know where interest rates are, which is essentially buyer demand. You know what you're working with. In 3 to 4 months, while I do think the market is going to continue to move sideways to up in most markets, we don't know what's going to happen, right? We have a lot of thoughts on rates. We have a lot of thoughts on different things, but at the end of the day, it's a guessing game to some extent. So you know what you have now, a bird in the hand, right? We're 2 in the bush. So people that are thinking about doing this are probably going to start sooner rather than later, in my opinion. So I think you'll start by mid-January, start to see some inventory. I think you'll be full, a lot of people putting their homes on the market March and April-ish. To get ready for those kids getting out of school, giving that opportunity to move out of state if they're moving out of state, or finding a property or whatever it is. That would be my guess. Second part of the question, days on the market. Hard to say right now, as nationwide in the pending home sales index that came out, or the pending home sales report that came out today, the average days on the market, I believe, was 18 days. Here in Southern California, it's like 7. But as a nation, 18 days is a very short period of time. I would imagine, it would stay somewhere close to that. I would say but probably between under 25 days on market for the most part. I think any nice home that comes on the market that is priced correctly is probably going to sell pretty quickly in most markets. Now, some markets, right, real estate's local, it's going to sit a little bit longer. Things aren't going to move like that. But the markets that did very well in 2021, in my opinion, are going to do the same markets are going to do well in 2022. Maybe not at the same level that they did, but they're going to do well. And so I think demand still stays high there. Days on the market still stays low. Housing starts. Honestly, I saw a report the other day, didn't really dive into it in much detail, just because new construction here in Southern California is just, it's non-existent to start. But Josh, thoughts on home starts? I'm sure you've taken a look at it.
Well, we had talked a few weeks back that Ivy Zellman did a couple of interviews, and she's talking about builders ramping up and overbuilding. And you're like, that's almost impossible. If your pool is empty and you have a little garden hose, it takes a long time to refill that pool. So the rate that they're building or the rate that they're wanting to build. So imagine last year we had supply chain issues, so getting materials, labor issues. Permits may have been issued, but starts were not what they could or should be. So builders do what they do. You look at every cycle, they always ramp up and they end up overbuilding at the end of the cycle. So I don't doubt that will happen. But when we're talking about nationwide, depending on whose numbers you look at, a 3 to 5 million shortage of homes for current levels of demand, it's going to take 5-6 years to be able to build that number of homes. Now, again, we talk about real estate being local, so we can talk about national numbers, but it really matters to you in your market. Is it very possible that in certain local markets, builders can overbuild? 100%. We don't have to deal with that in California, or at least in Southern California, LA, Orange County, Bay Area, just because there's not a lot of land, not a lot of building going on. But if you're in an area and you look around and builders are building, and you see sort of the supply demand equation start getting out of whack in a year or two, it could impact things. But in the short run, meaning the next 12 months, they cannot build and finish enough homes to fill that supply gap that we would need to get any type of balance in the market.
No, and to touch base back on that, that housing report from Logan, from Housing Wire, Matsushima, whatever his last name is, he says that he expects housing starts to continue. What he looks at is the St. Louis Fed's monthly housing inventory report, and as long as the 3-month average stays below 6.5 months of supply, his whole thing is that builders will continue to build. So you'll continue to see homes come on the market during that time. And so for the time being, you're going to see, again, new construction out there, builders wanting to build property. There's an opportunity to profit to, the housing shortage, right? There's different numbers out there, but I think the lowest number that I've seen is 4 million housing. That there were short 4 million houses in the United States. That's a lot of property. And I think on average, they build how many a year? Is it 1.5 million total?
That's about right. So
somewhere in that neighborhood.
You're
I forgot.
5 million short, and they're building a little over 1 million every year. How do they magically double that to fill the gap in a 3, 4, 5 year time frame? I don't think it's going to be possible because they underbuilt for so long after the last bust.
No, absolutely. Let's see.
I'm looking forward to this, Jeb. You got a super chat.
I know. Let's see here.
Go for it.
Oh, wow. Wow. I'm not even sure where to go there.
Chunarukusha. We've butchered it, so we apologize for being poor phonetic.
Let's see. Yeah, either way, appreciate the super chat. Much appreciated. Bought a house in August of 2021. How likely will I be in the negative on my investment by 2023, 2024? I know I bought it at a stupid time. My monthly payment is $1,380. I would argue to say that I don't know that you're going to be negative. Why? I mean, what makes you think you're going to be negative? You put a down payment down, you're going to continue to make payments. Your monthly payment is $1,380, so it's not a huge amount going towards the principal every month, but it's probably a couple $100 of that. Probably $300-400 a month, Josh. I mean, I don't know the actual number here, but
It's a good guess.
Going towards the principal. So each year, you're going to be paying roughly $5,000 toward the principal. So 3 years out, you've got, and each year it's going to go up a little bit, but you could say $15,000. You probably put a down payment down. I can't tell you the purchase price, but based on your payment, it can't be much over $100,000. So I would beg to say that you're probably not going to necessarily be upside down. Now, does that mean prices can't come down during that time? Absolutely not. It doesn't mean that at all. I just think, you've got, again, we've just talked about it. You've got some time before supply works itself out, and nothing happens, guys. I don't care. We've said this. It doesn't matter where interest rates go. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many homes are built until supply gets to a level where it exceeds demand. The housing market is going to continue to move sideways. It's going to move up. I mean, not a lot's going to happen here, people. And it's going to take some time for that to work out. Now, there are a lot of factors out there. I just don't know that any of them are truly going to impact housing prices in the long run. Now, that is not to say that they can't come down by 5% or 10%, but does that mean they come down 5 to 10 or 15 or whatever after they've gone up another 10, 15%? Who knows, right? Your guess is as good as mine. I just don't see much changing in the housing market. Thoughts on that question, Josh?
No, I look at it. So there was a follow up there. It's 280,000
okay.
purchase price. Redfin says it's 295.
So you put
now.
A decent amount down then.
To get that payment, there's a nice down payment, but I think it'll be back under 280,000 in a couple of years. So there's a couple of different mindsets. There's the folks out there that are the gamblers, the optimists, the positive people that everything they wager on is going to go to the moon, and they would say in this situation, it's going to be worth 500 in a couple of years. I'm going to be rich. I'm going to sell it and buy $1 million house. Then there's the people that look at it and they're a little more pessimistic. They may think realistic and they're worried and saying, "Oh, I bought too low." We look forward this year. Again, we don't know where you're at. If you want to throw that up, I'd love to see. But if you get 7% appreciation this year, you got 7% since you bought the home. So you're up 15%. And again, you're paying down probably about $400 a month. So $5,000 a year. There's really, I don't want to say there's no way for you to be upside down on it, but nothing on the horizon says supply demand equation flips to the point that home prices are going to be dropping. And we've talked about this before. Home prices are sticky to the upside. What does that mean? It means when they go up, they may stay level, but they're very averse to coming down. Because let's say we get 3 years down the line and your home did drop in value and you pay 280 and it's worth 270. People are very resistant to selling at a loss. They'll just stick. So you'll see less homes come on the market. They'll wait it out until the economy picks up and recovers. So where you have big downturns like we had in 2008 is where you have a lot of forced sales. The economy got so bad, people were so upside down, people had put no money down, so they weren't really walking away from anything other than ruining their credit. We had this massive wave of distressed properties that brings values down. In a normal downturn, you have a very small minority of the market that needs to move, a divorce, a job transfer, and they'll sell at a loss. Most people, when they're facing the prospect of selling at a loss, if they don't have to sell, they just post up and say, "Hey, I'm going to stay here longer." So from that perspective, that's what I expect the next downturn to be, a 10% downturn from a higher peak than where we're at now, definitely much higher than where you were in August of 2021. So again, you tell me a micro market, we may look at it and agree with you. I watched a documentary the other night. Crazy thing, for those of you near New Orleans, you may know this, but they built a theme park in 2000. It went bankrupt in 2002. Six Flags Magic Mountain, or Six Flags bought it and ran it for a couple of years, and the hurricane came and it was abandoned. $130 million theme park got abandoned. So it's in East New Orleans, and East New Orleans is the lower income, lower priced area. They still, partly because of the blight of this giant abandoned theme park in the middle of their neighborhood, are still not above 2005 levels. So there's weird stuff that happens in an area. If you have a giant, Bentonville, Arkansas, they're very dependent on Walmart. If somehow Walmart went out of business, their home prices would suffer regardless of what's happening in the economy. So things can happen in smaller micro markets, but on the whole, in the big picture, nationwide, we're not looking at a decrease in home prices between now and 2023, 2024.
Good stuff. Logical Thinker has a question. Do you think the USA should stop allowing large corporations and foreign investors, non-U.S. citizens, from purchasing residential property in the U.S.? Why or why not? I mean, do I think they should? No. I mean, I don't know. I don't spend my time thinking about that sort of thing, quite frankly. Do I think it would ever happen? No. Large corporations, remember, it's a lot of politics in this sort of thing. Guess who's backing a lot of politicians? Large corporations, a lot of money floating around. There's a reason why I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. Should it happen? Some would say so, but I just don't necessarily think, even though, corporations are buying a percentage of the property, they're still not the majority of people buying this property. Everyone looks at, the Zillows, the large corporations, and says, well, that's the reason that housing is the way it is. No, it's not. They're a piece of the puzzle. They're adding to it, but they're not the sole reason. It's, if Zillow didn't buy any houses last year, we would have still had a housing shortage. It wouldn't have caused, the market to necessarily do much different. Now, in some markets, if they bought heavily in that market, maybe a little bit, but for my thoughts overall, I don't think that it's a problem for the majority of the U.S. out there. I don't think that they're necessarily the reason that home prices are going through the roof. Now, Josh may have a different take on this thing.
Well, we almost got me started on the rant on student loans, and IBR payments and forbearance are not the problem. They're also not the solution. Well, in this instance, if we ban corporations from buying rental properties or building subdivisions of single family residences for rental, that's not the solution to the problem. The problem is the idiots in Washington, D.C., and don't get mad because Republicans and Democrats are both idiots. They have pursued policies for the last 20 years of spending money we don't have, running debts to the moon, which has had the unintended consequence because they can't foresee the obvious consequences of their idiot actions. We have spectacularly low interest rates. Spectacularly low interest rates mean that corporations can borrow billions at very low costs, while rents are at a high level, while appreciation is at a high level because the carrying costs for owning a home are lower because of those low interest rates. So we've given corporations every incentive in the world to acquire and hold single family residences. So how about we start taking the long view? We literally have one party in Washington, D.C. right now. And again, don't get me wrong, both sides are idiots. Both sides have been more than willing to spend money we don't have for over 20 years now. But we have a party in Washington, D.C. talking about the Build Back Better, which $2 trillion, and they're patting themselves on the back for cutting it down from $5 trillion. And the way they did that is by lying and saying that the entitlements will expire in 1 year. We've never had an entitlement program enacted and rolled back. So we know that in 1 year, no one's going to say, hey, that was awesome getting free stuff for a year. We'll just give it back. So we look, again, we've talked about this number a million times. When Obama left office, took office, $7 trillion federal debt. When Biden leaves office here in 2 years, it's going to be $30 trillion of federal debt. That's 4x federal debt.
Yeah. When
we look at it, you can see that every industrialized nation who's become over indebted, greater national debt than 100% of GDP, it decreases productivity, decreases GDP going forward, because it pulls money away from productive purposes. So we're going to have low interest rates. Rates are going to go lower. It's going to force asset prices higher. The haves, the 1%, the 90% or the 10%, well, however you want to define it, people that own assets are going to continue getting richer. So the rant here is, I don't think we say, hey, you can't invest your free money or low cost money in this one area to get a yield because they'll just put it somewhere else and make another problem. How about we stop spending money we don't have so that we can get back to something normal, which is an interest rate of 5, 6, 6.5, 7%. We're nowhere near normal. And until we are normal in interest rates, we're going to see asset inflation. It's not an asset bubble because a bubble pops. This is asset inflation that is incredibly logical when you look at the cost of money and the way money is allocated.
Boom. There you go. Mic drop.
We got no more.
Pandemic closing in about 2 weeks in Vacaville. Can I switch my loan from a jumbo loan to a conventional loan? Have 150,000 in reserves. Should I? So I'm assuming the question is because loan amounts have potentially changed. Conforming loan balance has gone up. Josh, are now in a position because they're going to close after the first of the year to take a conventional loan. Thoughts on this sort of question?
Let's go back to numbers never lie. Get your loan officer to do a side-by-side comparison. What does the current jumbo loan look like, both in terms of interest rate and costs, and what does a equivalent conventional loan? So the thing that you mentioned here, have 150,000 in reserves. So it may mean, hey, let me put more money down to get under the conventional loan limits. And if that's the case, the premium that you're paying for jumbo loans is pretty minimal in most cases. So if that's the case, I would not lean towards putting more money down just to get to a conventional loan, but look at the numbers side by side and do the analysis.
All right. Faustino, can you speak on the housing market on the East Coast compared to the West Coast and the closing stages of buying a home in Connecticut? Would like to know, based on the market info provided, is it smart? Unfortunately, I don't know much about the East Coast markets. I follow housing as a whole, not necessarily East Coast. Outside of California, I follow California, but hard for me to really give you any insight on it. I can tell you that a lot of the markets on the East Coast are also seeing similar, as to what we're seeing here in Southern California, which is low inventory, high buyer demand. A market continuing to move up. So trust your agent, have that conversation with your agent where they see property, and some insight there. Outside of that, it's really hard to say. I say, how difficult was it for you to find a property? How long had you been looking? How many offers did you put in? How long did it take you to finally get an offer accepted? What are you seeing with regards to inventory in your market? Are you seeing a lot of property not moving or things sitting on the market for a long time? If that's the case, then it might be slowing a little bit. But if you're not seeing inventory, things are still selling very quickly, multiple offers, all of that, it's probably going to continue doing what it has been doing. Not a lot's going to change in that environment. I mean, you're in an area, Connecticut. I don't know what part of Connecticut, but what I can tell you, it's winter, right? The market probably slows a little bit more there than it would in other areas that don't have big winters, don't have snow, don't have a lot of that stuff. Now, it may continue just to go gangbusters because of the market, but seasonality is something that plays into that. So you got to kind of take some of those things I said with a grain of salt because of the time of year and the market that you're in. So again, I'll go back to, it's very difficult to say, trust those that are around you, kind of guiding you through the process, and hopefully find some comfort in what you're doing. But I think, again, I'll go back to what we said at the beginning. I do think home prices are going to continue to move sideways to up in most markets. I believe home prices next year are going to be higher in most markets than they are now. Does that mean where you are in Connecticut? No, but I would say as a whole, I think that's probably, realistic for most markets.
Jeb, one of the things you said in an earlier answer gives away some of our California bias here. You said inventory starts to pick up in early February, and it's likely to move up a little this year as people try to get ahead of the selling market. An area like Connecticut, Minnesota, areas where you have these really heavy winters, people don't like buying homes buried in snow. So it makes it harder for inspections, harder to see exactly what it is going on. Now, obviously last year, with interest rates really low, a lot of pent-up demand, it didn't play out that way. So probably less so than normal. But you do have areas with bad weather. Their spring buying season kicks off a little bit later.
Got it. Here's the part in the show where I tell you that we did 48 live episodes this past year. This is the 48th live episode. As Josh mentioned, that's 96 hours of content that we're putting out there, answering questions, trying to give some realistic ideas of what's happening in the market. So if you're still watching, you found any value at all, hit the thumbs up, help us, more people see the video, see the content. It does matter, believe it or not. And also, if you're looking to buy a house, you're looking to find a real estate agent, find a lender, there's a link that I'll throw up here on the chat here in just a minute. Go there, connect you with an expert, in the state that you're looking, to help guide you through that process. So thank you guys for being here, because we continue to do it because of that. So Conrad says, when will you both do a home tour? So a home tour of our houses, or a home tour in
just
general?
Invite over. My pool's done. Once it warms up, everyone come over. We'll do a show from the backyard with a live audience.
There you go. With a live audience, huh? Just live questions, like people sit in
like
chairs.
There'll be like 4 people with a beer and a lawn chair just throwing out questions.
Willing, raise your hand. Stop talking out loud. That was to you, Willing. That would be the live show. But no, yeah. Hey, listen, I've actually thought about doing home tours as like a segment on my channel, like some of the listings that I go through and touring it and kind of talking about that property, some of the things I see in the property. I just don't know if it's a liability, if it's not my listing. And if it is my listing and I'm talking crap on it, that could also be a problem.
This house is dog shit.
So
we buy it at no price.
It's border whether or not I think it, unless you just do all positive stuff about a house, I feel like there's a fine line there. And it's one that I don't necessarily want to cross at this point in my career. So I've kept to not doing them. Now, if that were just, there are some really great, there's some YouTubers out there that just do like super luxury high end listings that have huge followings, and that's all they do. And there's some rad properties they look at. And so there's some cool people out there to follow.
They rarely call out the gaudy, awful stuff.
No, that's the thing. And I think that's what could make a good video, is like just crapping on some of these things, some of the things that people have done in properties or that they haven't done. I don't know what the legal ramifications are for me just completely just taking somebody's listing, videoing it for one, and talking crap about it. So not coming anytime soon, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we got a good one here that I've just been itching to answer.
All right, let's hear it.
So Brad Ferguson says, are you guys starting to see NODs filed from second lien positions on old 2006 to 2007 mortgages? In reviewing LPs in SoCal, I'm starting to see more. How do people get away with no payment for 10 plus years? I get probably 3 to 5 inquiries a year from someone wanting to refinance. And it boggles my mind that they have seconds that they haven't paid on for 10 plus years, just like you said. Never been an NOD, never been collection efforts. Occasionally, these people will get letters that the servicing has been transferred. For the most part, I do not know why lenders aren't attempting to foreclose, because what happened, almost all of these second trust deeds were sold, whether they were a HELOC or a fixed second. No one wanted to own them. They were nearly worthless. If I had my life to live over again, I would have taken every dollar I had and bought for like 1/10 of a penny on the dollar these worthless second mortgages. The reason why they were worthless is most of those homes ended up going to foreclosure. They were so far underwater that the second just got blown out. You weren't gonna defend your position because there was no equity. When you have a second mortgage, you have to bring the first mortgage holder current to foreclose, and no one was doing that. So the big money was gathering up and helping the big banks get these off their books by buying them at very low cost. Now, the question is that defies logic, is we're now 10 years after the fact. Homes are above the prices they were then. These things have sat there for 10 years without payments, accruing interest, accruing late fees. Had a lady last year that had, at the time in 2007, 2008, she was in the desert here in California. So she had a condo. She owed $100,000 on the first, had a $20,000 second back in the day. It was like an 80-20 purchase. And she now owes about $150,000 on her second, and was stunned and amazed to find that the lender actually wanted to collect that money. What you'll see is a lot of these people filed bankruptcy. So once you file bankruptcy, they have to stop reporting on your credit. After 7 to 10 years, depending on the type of line item on your credit report, it has to fall off of there. So some people, it doesn't even show on their credit. They've got 800 credit scores. There's been no collection efforts, been no negative repercussions, and they just roll in and go, hey, I got an 800 credit score. Can I refi? Sure, no problem. We find out when we look at a property profile or get the prelim from title, the preliminary title report, you're going to see this second lien and go, hey, what was that second lien? Did you ever pay it off? Oh, no, don't worry about it. I filed bankruptcy. The bankruptcy blows out your responsibility to pay the debt and their ability to collect on it through any collection effort other than filing a notice of default and foreclosing on the property. They still have the security interest in the home. It was a secured debt. So I don't have a good answer for you here. These lenders can and should be filing NODs left and right and getting their money. You force these people's hands to go and either refinance or sell their home, but they're not. And I don't understand why. Most of the lenders that hold those loans bought them for so little. You know, we're talking like $50,000 liens for like $500 or less. And that $50,000 lien 10 years later is $100,000 or $125,000. It's a nice return on your money once you get to collect on it, which happens when the people that didn't get foreclosed on sell or refinance. So it's been nice returns. It's been a long process for them to get it. So it'll be interesting to see if it starts happening at some point, because it defies logic why a lender who has the ability to foreclose would not foreclose on someone with equity in their home.
Hey, it just keeps, well, I guess, I mean, I was going to say the equity keeps going up, but I mean, they only get paid for what they owe anyway. So, let's see here. Johnny Co. My builder said 6-month completion timeline for home we just secured. It seems like 8+ months in the norm though. Thoughts? Not really a lot of thoughts on it. What I would tell you is that if they tell you 6 months, it's probably closer to 8, 9, 10 months. I mean, most of these builders are, you know, what we've seen here, people commenting on the show, have got under contract on a property that was supposed to be due at specified time, and now it's a couple months back. It's kind of like the Rivian that I ordered it a couple months back, supposed to be due 2022 sometime, January, February, whatever, and find out we're looking at 2023.
Bro,
so
your kids are going to be teenagers and 3 times their current size by the time you get it. You're like, this Rivian doesn't work. I need like an Escalade ESV or something to drive.
Hey, listen, by the time I get it, the order list will be so long that I'll have a premium on that bad boy. I'll just sell it. But no, I think expect additional delays would be my guess. Just because, you know, it's there's supply constraints on home building as well. You know, a lot of factors playing in there, but I would tell you that in theory, just like home construction, remodeling, just add some additional time to it. But I can't say whether it's going to be 8 months or less, but I would almost guess it's probably going to be longer than 6 for most markets out there. Let's see. You also asked a question here about easiest way to determine a listing price for your home that you want to sell. The easiest way is talking to a local expert in that market, a professional that knows that market, understands the comparables, and can derive a value from you, or for you rather. The way not to approach it is looking at Zillow and Redfin and, you know, whatever, and getting your price from those. You know, again, they are tools in your toolbox, but talk to an expert, a professional that can, you know, guide you through that process. There's a link scrolling at the moment. If you click on that, I know tons of agents up in your market, happy to refer you to somebody that can guide you in that process. So click on that and I will connect you.
Similar question here. Let's go to this one. Richard Rivera, question. I want to put an offer on a house hack property that needs a lot of work and is completely vacant. The only comps I can find were in rentable condition. How do you evaluate a price on this?
So good question. I think you kind of got to back out a little bit. You know, the thing with doing repairs on a property, you know, you've got to figure out what it's going to cost you to be able to get that property to the condition of the properties that are renting at X amount, right? So if the properties, again, that you're looking at have already been fixed up, how much is it going to cost you to get to the properties to that number? But here's the deal. You don't necessarily get dollar for dollar in your upgrades. Just because you spend $70,000 redoing a property doesn't necessarily mean your property is going to increase $70,000 in value. So somewhat of a fine line. You can't just take the cost that it's going to take you to get there, subtract it off the purchase price, and that's your number. There's some, some adjustments that you need to make there. I don't know, Josh. I mean, this is something that you deal with flips, right? Flips are a little bit different. But similar type thing. How do you analyze the price of something that needs to be fixed up versus what something that's selling, or in this case, renting, that has already been fixed up?
So when we're looking at a true flip, we're going to fix it, sell it, and make profit. I work my way back from how much money am I going to invest between down payment, holding repair costs, and selling costs, and what is my profit? What is my cash on cash return? In this instance, it sounds like you're wanting to hold the property. So I would then look at how much am I going to have invested? Can I refinance when I'm done to get any of that back? What's my investment? What's my yield on my rents? So in a bigger picture from the investment perspective, that's how I'm going to analyze it and work my way to what I'm comfortable paying. And the market's been so nuts. Jeb's had a couple of flips the last few years, and I get the first right to come in and look at them and give them a number. And we haven't got either one of them because someone came in with a crazy number that didn't meet my figures. And the funny thing is, both of them came out okay. The market saved
the last
them.
one, dude, was the buy of the century, just because the market's gone up gangbusters since that thing.
Yeah, if we'd had a crystal ball and had any idea, I would have happily paid what they paid. But we didn't. It is what it is. So know your numbers, know what you want either in your cash on cash return or in your rent yield. And then in determining what you need to pay. So say in those instances, I got to look at supply and demand. There's not a huge supply in our market of fixer properties, and there is a large demand. A lot of people want them. And in those two situations, Jeb had a buyer who was willing to pay more than I was willing and comfortable to pay. And I'm sure Jeb probably came back and said, hey, this is what they want. Do you want to pay that? And the answer is no, I don't want to pay that. And they ended up being right. I was wrong. But looking at in your market for that property, if there's a lot of demand and there's not a lot of those homes on the market, you're probably going to have to pay more than what you think. Jeb's talking about, here's the improvements. Do I get dollar for dollar? It almost doesn't matter. In a hot market like we're in right now, the discount that you should get, like in 2008, you could say, okay, here's what the home's worth when we're going to resell it. Here's what it costs to put it into that condition, and here's what I want my margin to be. There's my offer. And we were buying at like 60 to 65% of what we were going to resell at, and those numbers worked really well. Those numbers you don't get close to that in Southern California. You're lucky. The discounts for having to fix the property are very minimal. You're lucky if you end up with $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 of equity for your trouble of having a home empty. We talked about the home I bought in Orange. If we hadn't made a really good buy on that, I've got $40,000 in carrying costs since last June. Part of that was my fault, being busy, helping a lot of people with loans. We didn't get it done quite as quickly as possible, but a lot of stuff happened with that property and a lot of work needed to be done. So you have to factor all of those things into it, in addition to just saying, here's what I'd like to pay, here's what it's going to take to get it done. You have to also look at supply and demand in the market for those types of properties.
There you go. Couple more questions here. Actually, another one from Johnny Co. Johnny says, seeing rent backs go through, are buyers willing to accept them in order to secure a home in the seller's market? Yeah, I am seeing rent backs. Some examples of rent backs I've had this year. I had one 6 months free rent, in fact. Allowed my clients to completely remodel their home. Unfortunately, they didn't finish it 100%, but it was able to move in. But they had 6 months free rent. I had several at 60 days of actual paid rent. So yeah, people are willing to do it. I think it depends on the market that you're in. If you're in a super competitive market like here in SoCal, because people want to secure something, they're willing to do things that they wouldn't normally do. And in this case, it's allow that rent back for that period of time. So I would say, yeah, you're probably in a good position to take advantage of that, as long as you're, realistic on how you approach other things in the offer.
Jeb, I've got one here that's more of a comment than a question. And once I make it, I'm going to add my own comment and then add a question.
Okay.
So Reckham says, I'm pretty sure Jeb can rap West Coast lyrics. LOL. So my comment is that absolutely not. Jeb is sort of stuck in the hinterland in North Carolina between dirty South and East Coast. So
Oh,
he knows
bro.
nothing. He knows nothing about West Coast.
Oh,
He's
wow.
now a Californian, but he's sort of stuck between that Nelly, poppy, dirty South
Nelly.
stuff,
Nelly.
and then
Oh, boy.
So you get him started. Now he can fill in the blanks if he wants to show that he has some
Wow.
West Coast lyrics. Let him go.
So here's what I will say. Earlier, you asked me what that I read that report and asked me to regurgitate the information that I read in that report, which I can't do, and I read it 5 hours ago. But on the other hand, lyrics from pretty much any song of any genre somehow stick their way in my head. So I know a lot of useless crap, lyric wise, of West Coast, East Coast. I know it all. And it's not something I'm proud of, but I can sing with the best of them.
Listen, I don't want proof of your ability to rap any
Listen,
lyrics,
dude,
but what I'm
put it up
saying,
here, bro.
what I want you to put up here is, do you have a picture of the herringbone?
I do. I have it on Instagram somewhere.
And your Ewings and your parka. If you have your parka, your herringbone, and your Ewings on, that's
Dude,
what we want to see.
All right, give me a minute. I will bring up. Wow, that is old school, bro. So I'm a redneck from North Carolina. That's really what I am. So that's where I grew up. I grew up in the South, lived there until I went to college. Well, actually through college, and then moved to California. As soon as I graduated, drove across country, live in California now for 20 years. With that said, man, I had, as a kid, I had the Carl Kanai. I had it all, bro. A herringbone, wore the hockey jerseys, the starter coats, had a mullet at some point in my life. My kids have them now. I got flair, bro.
That's child abuse. That's child abuse. That's not flair. That's child abuse.
Bro, come on. Hold on. I will find a picture here in just a second as we get a question that you can answer. I'm
going to start calling him Walker Menendez because that's what's coming to you and your wife soon enough.
Let's see here. So Jennifer's made a couple comments here about, she's a lender in 48 of 50 states, I believe it's 48 states. So she sees a lot of different markets, right? Josh and I primarily he serves California on the mortgage side. I'm on the lending side, but it's always good to get feedback from somebody doing loans in other states to get an idea. Hey, what are you seeing in other states with regards to appreciation? Are you having issues with appraisals, that sort of thing? And one comment here is, one of the hottest markets in Texas. Basically, she was talking about Houston and not seeing it slow down. So, a lot of markets out there continuing to move forward, continuing to do what, they have been doing and essentially what we've been saying they would do for some time. So just keep that in mind if you're out there looking. But as I always say, real estate's local. So just because, again, we have a bias here towards Southern California because that's where we are. That's what we know. That's what we talk about. That's the transactions that I'm involved in are here in Southern California. So a lot of what I talk about is talking about my market, but I'm trying to use that information to give you guys enough insight so that you can apply what I'm talking about in your own market. But things are local. So just keep that in mind.
Jeb,
what were you going to say there?
Along those lines, we had another question here. Mr. Ram Fan 1982, which I got a bone to pick. If you're a Ram fan from 1982, when they ran out on you and went to St. Louis for 20 years and lived with another woman and then came back home, you just took them back in and it was like, okay, cool. You've been cheating on me for 20 years and I'll just be a Ram fan again. I was a Ram fan in 1982 and that'll never in a million billion years happen again. But that was his name, not his question. Does it matter whether you get pre-approved through an online lender or a traditional brick and mortar lender? We've gone through this as a different angle of asking that question. The thing you got to ask yourself is online lenders are generally large call centers that have young, inexperienced loan officers, if we want to call them loan officers. They're licensed, so they technically are loan officers. Little to no experience. One of the cool things you can do is when they communicate with you, they have to send you their NMLS ID. Look up their NMLS ID in the public database. You'll see a 10-year self-reported employment history. Most of them were at GNC, Pizza Hut, any number of places very recently. So are there online lenders that operate off of a different model? Absolutely. And I would also throw in, online. A lot of our clients find us online through the videos here on YouTube, through introductions from Jeb. Jennifer Beeston does a ton of business through YouTube, through her TikTok channel. So is she an online lender? No, she's an expert who her office, you can talk to her and her team who have done this for a long time. So less so important about the channel than who it is that you're dealing with. You can break it down to brokers, direct lenders, and big banks. The best direct lenders and the best brokers are going to be your best option. So
while you're talking there, look at that guy.
That is a sweet stash and a sweet herringbone.
That I don't know what year that is. That's probably, wow. I don't know. I got a vest on or something. I don't know what that is.
It's like a sweatshirt cardigan over a t-shirt with a herringbone.
That is fantastic. Whoever let that happen, I have no idea, but wow.
Are you gonna replace your real estate headshots with that?
I might. That would be normal. Like have a shot from like 30 years ago as my real estate headshot. Yeah. So guys, there you go. That's what I got for the new year. Giving you that thing. I might be able to find one with a mullet too. Here, while we're just doing it, we'll just make this a friendly show and give you all the stuff you want to see. One thing I forgot to mention at the beginning of the show is Jennifer Lego is here, and Jennifer is one of our moderators. She's been moderating the chat, I think, all year long. So thank you, Jennifer, for doing that. I appreciate you. I appreciate you taking the time to do this every week. Someone asked a moment ago if you were a real estate agent, and you might be at this point. I think you have probably the knowledge to have a real estate channel, but I believe you're a nurse, if I remember correctly. So somewhere in that field, but not a real estate professional, but I think probably paying attention enough to be able to answer all the questions for you.
Jeb, we get a lot of awesome questions here, but tonight the comments are better than the questions by a 2-to-1 margin. John Isola followed up with, Jeb went from grits to the Ritz.
Oh, that's so good. I'm not a grits person. I can't eat grits, man. They have no flavor at all. Like I don't know how people eat them. But that's just a whole different story. But I grew up with them. Yes, I did. A lot of them. All right. Trying to get back into the questions here. Sadly, that picture is looking at me here from the side. So I've got to minimize this, and I'll bring another good one up here at some point. Let's see here.
Here's a fairly simple one. Andy Rue says, I want to buy land. How can I go about it? Can I put a mortgage on it? Yes, you absolutely can buy land with a mortgage. Terms are going to be not nearly as good. It's higher risk to the lender because if you don't develop it, don't do anything with it, and they take it back, it's just dirt. It just sits there. They have to pay the taxes on it. So in general, you're going to pay a higher interest rate. You're going to make a bigger down payment than you would. There's no 3%, 5% down on land. You're talking 20 to 50% down, depending on where the land is and how far along it is in the entitlement process.
All right, there you go.
Mr.
All right, let's talk about this real quick.
Mr. Ram fan followed up and said, yes, sir. He took that cheater back after 20 years in St. Louis.
Let's see here. Jason had a question. Jason said, can you go through the process broadly of buying a house using finance? So what happens is when you're buying a property or considering buying a property, you are going to either talk to a real estate agent first, or you're going to talk to a mortgage professional first. If you talk to a real estate agent first, typically what they're going to do, or what they should do, is refer you back to a mortgage expert, or tell you to talk to your expert on the mortgage side to get pre-approved. That pre-approval process is going to consist of you filling out a loan application. First, you're going to have a conversation with the lender and probably just have some basic questions answered to find out if you're even a potential candidate to buy a house. If it sounds like something that is reasonable, probably going to fill out a loan application. They're going to run your credit. They're going to ask for tax returns. They're going to ask for W-2s. They're going to ask for bank statements, driver's license, some of the, pretty much the basics there. They're going to analyze that information and come up, based on your debt to income ratio, your income versus how much debt you show on your credit report. And if you have, any sort of additional income or any additional payouts that might not be on there, that's a whole different conversation. But they're going to figure out how much you can afford to purchase. And then from there, you're going to determine whether or not that's reasonable for you in the market that you're in. From there, you're going to go back to your agent, have that conversation, and try to go through that process. Now, there's a lot of things I skipped over just to get through that quickly, but that's the consensus for the most part, right? You're going to have a conversation with an expert. You're not going to call the call center. You're not going to listen to the ad on the radio and call that person. You're not going to watch TV and see whatever, or what's the guy's name on 1070, Josh, that's been doing advertisements for
Dave Ramsey?
No, not Dave Ramsey.
Oh,
I can't think of the guy's name. But anyway, you're going to call an expert, right? How are you going to find an expert? Talk to somebody that had a great experience, that, went through the process, reach out to me or Josh and get referred. But that's how you're going to do it. Josh, anything you want to add to that part about going through, talking to a mortgage professional there with regards to the finance side?
no, other than a big question that we get here on the show, or people that you connect with me, or people that find us online, or just reach out in any way. Say, I want to buy, but I'm not ready to buy right now. It's too early. I don't want to waste your time. My job is to build relationships with people who are likely to borrow money to buy real estate in the future, now or in the future. So never too early. And one of the best investments you can make is 20, 30, 40 minutes of firing away with questions and getting answers and getting a game plan. So if it's 3 months from now, 15 months from now, you know what you're wanting to do. And if you think you want to buy in June, I tell everyone, we start the process now, including pulling credit. Because what we can do with that, we can do a what if analysis to see what we can do to get you from a 685 credit score to a 740. We can look at anything that might be weird in your income or employment history that we need to fix or change. So like the most stressful part, Jeb, you tell me if I'm wrong, the most stressful part about buying real estate is waiting to find out what's happening with your financing. Am I getting the loan approval? Did the appraisal come in?
I would say normally, yes. In this market,
now
the
it's getting a home under contract.
Yeah, the emotion is all over the place. So it's not just one, it's not just the act of getting the finance, but honestly, that is the most important piece. I mean, as a real estate agent, I can tell you the most important piece of the puzzle is making sure that you are pre-approved, so that when you do go through that process, you make offers, there's no worries on your side of whether or not it's actually doable, right? In my career, I've seen a lot of people go through the process, get under contract, and find out they can't buy a house for one reason or another because they didn't do things properly to start. And if you think it's emotional to buy a house, once you're invested emotionally in that process and then find out you can't, it's even worse. So that is that. Let's see here. Let's move along. I was looking for another picture, but I will look again in a moment.
Let me throw this one up here, and it's for you. Randy says the market looks slow right now during the holidays in California. Was it this slow last year during the holidays? And the thing that, before you answer that, I want to throw out, when I hear stuff like this, I always wonder, what are consumers looking at that they're getting that feeling? Because all of my clients who are out in the market and looking right now, they're not coming back telling me it's slow. They're saying anything that comes on the market that I would be interested in, there's multiple offers. We have to get in our offer as quickly as possible. I had a client, 10 minutes before we come on air here tonight, she sends over, hey, we need to get an offer. They're going to be accepting offers through the weekend. So we would like to be the first in, so that when they go through them on Monday. And our realtor said in their market, they're seeing deals close in 10 days. So are you able to close in 10 days? So that's the crazy stuff that we're still dealing with here. And I don't think it's all that different in other parts of the country. The good homes are still going very quickly.
I'll add to that and say, honestly, it's hard to remember year from year, like how the market was. I can tell you that in 2020, it was definitely a hot market all year long, especially, once, the world realized that it wasn't going to completely fall apart and, stimulus started hitting and whatever. But the market started to really pick up in like May or June of last year and had a strong finish all the way through the end of the year. I would say this year, pretty much the same. It's hard to, I don't remember year over year exactly how it was, but I can tell you this spring that we had this year in 2021 was the strongest spring that we've probably ever had with regards to how competitive it was, how fast things moved, appreciation, all of that good stuff. And even through this year, I mean, I put a home on the market, a week before Christmas. And never would I have done that in the past. I would have always said, let's wait till after the first of the year. Let's not do this. We put it on the market on a Friday, and had 3 offers by Sunday, and in contract early that next week. And it's set to close second week of January. So again, I mean, it was a different environment a little bit this year, just because last year people were still really worried about the pandemic. People were still really worried about getting out and doing certain things. There were certain restrictions in place in different states. You know, my kids couldn't even go to school the first half of last year. They had to be homeschooled. This year is a little bit different, right? People are out and about. Things are moving along. So I would almost tell you that this year was probably a little bit hotter market, just because, you know, things were able to go a little bit more normal. But again, I don't remember the numbers exactly. But both very competitive markets.
You know, Jeb, here's just to close that out. What I will say for us, rates were lower last year, so refinances were busier. So we were busy through the holidays. I can absolutely say we're busier this year with buyers through the holidays than we were last year. Last year, it seemed like the buyers took a little bit of a vacation, came back strong in the first part of January, really strong in the first part of January. This year's been pretty heavy through December. But there's other things. That's just anecdotal. That's for us. Personally, in my company, it could be different for other folks. But Jeb, this is a question we've answered in different variations over time, but we haven't answered it in a while, and it's a good one. Nathan Pham says, how might you advise a homeowner to sell their current home and buy a new one? Buy contingent upon sale of current home, or sell first, rent, and find something? What are the different strategies? What do you find works best?
Before you do either, make sure that, you know, you're looking at the market and finding something out there, whatever market it is, whether it's in your local market or you're looking at purchasing in another market out of state, that there's actually property there that matches what you're looking for in the price range that you're looking. I think there's a big misconception out there that there's a lot of these states are really less expensive now, or less expensive than, say, states like California, and you just go buy property really cheap. A lot of them have appreciated substantially, and the value that was once there is still there, but not at the levels that it was. But once you've determined that that's realistic, it's hard, right? I mean, if you do contingent upon selling your property, you're in a better position to not be homeless, so to speak, and have time to find the right one. That's one strategy, but it is going to be a little bit tougher probably to get sellers to accept your offer, especially if it's competitive and there's multiple offers. Now, you can go into escrow, get an offer, and be ready to go if that property does present itself and whatever. But even then, it's still a little bit tougher to do it. Your second option, as you mentioned, is potentially selling and renting something. The problem with that is, you know, you sell your property, you rent. How long are you renting before you find that property? Are you able to find it quickly, or you end up being a renter for a year or 2 years and potentially missing out on additional appreciation, you know, tax advantages of owning a property? There's a lot of factors that play in there that you need to factor in and be okay with. And it's completely okay if you're okay with that, right? You just need to understand what the market's doing. And the other option would just be, you know, selling your property with the idea that you're going to not do it contingent, not rent anything, and you're going to find something in that process. That you probably shooting yourself in the foot to some extent, right? You need to have a backup plan, because otherwise you make decisions, you know, irrational decisions about finding homes rather than finding the right one. When people's backs are against the wall, they decide to just kind of crumble in many cases and say, well, this one's good enough. And that's what you don't want to do when purchasing a property, right? You want to find the right one or something close to the right one, versus sacrificing, if you will. So I don't know that I have a right answer for you. I can tell you I've closed all different kinds all year, right? So this year I've sold property. In fact, we just closed one in the month of December that was contingent upon her selling a property. The contingency wasn't the issue. The property fell out of escrow a couple of different times for various reasons. Fortunately, we had somebody on the other side, the listing agent, that was willing to work with us and allowed us to close that transaction. So we were able to do that one. I've had people that have sold and found the property in the time frame, and I've had people sell and go rent. So it's really what's comfortable for you. I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer in this environment. I would tell you, start with strategy one if you can, which is go contingent. Just try it. Try to make, I think that's the path of least resistance. Honestly, a little bit more difficult to do. It is doable, but that to me is the most reasonable approach. Probably where I should have started versus the rant, but yeah, I would start there. And then if you can't find it, then maybe try one of the other options or pull it off until you start to see more inventory.
We got another good one, Jeb, here that I think both you and I have some interesting personal insights on. So Tony Vicente says, I'm not handy. How many units should I own before outsourcing to a management company? At this point, I'm feeling like 8 to 10 units is reason to make that move, considering I work full-time. Thoughts? My initial thought on this is, I have a property with a property manager. I have properties that I manage myself, including vacation rentals, which basically my wife does that. No, not basically, my wife actually does that. So no work on my part. But what I would say is, whenever I see the fees for a property manager, I just go, no, I can do it myself. Now, if we're talking 8 to 10 units, so 8 to 10 doors, you start increasing the likelihood of getting a 2 a.m. call of some sort of emergency. So to me, that is where the equation tips. I don't worry about not being handy. There are lots of handymen that charge reasonable hourly rates. Build a relationship with a good handyman. The management piece of it, if you're screening your tenants well, should be fairly low effort, low work. It just becomes the issue of once you have enough doors, you're going to be getting calls at odd hours and inopportune times when you don't want to step away from your family, and you just have to balance the cost of that versus doing it yourself. Now, Mr. Jeb here actually manages some properties for a few people. What are your thoughts on that?
Again, you kind of addressed it. Do you want to be the person they call when things go wrong? Right? I mean, you can save some money doing it. And it's great if nothing goes wrong, but what happens when it does? Do you have the resources? Do you have, because chances are you're not going to be the person repairing it. Even, if you're able to, in many cases, you got a full-time job, you're probably going to outsource it to someone. So the question is, do you have the people to do it that you trust, that can do it timely, can, at a reasonable price? If you have all of those and they're easy to call and you trust them, then managing it yourself is not a huge deal, especially if they're local. Now, out of area is a whole different animal, but I would tell you, you can write off the management fee at the end of the year, right? It is a tax deduction, so there are some benefits to do it if you don't want to do it. I mean, don't just think of it as a tax write-off, but it's one of the things that you can write off. But having somebody manage your property takes the worry out of it. And then if something does happen, what happens in the environment where, like last year, where people aren't paying, you have different issues going on? Is that person able to take over and deal with all that stuff? That's part of it. And also, who's vetting these people, right? A property management company, or at least a real estate agent, whoever it is on that side, can at least help you vet the people coming in to make sure that, that you're selecting the right people. Just because they have a high credit score or they look good because they make a decent amount of income doesn't necessarily mean they're the best person for the property. So there's a lot of moving pieces there. I think it comes down to how comfortable you are with it. 8 to 10 units is a lot for one person to manage. I would tell you that if you're starting to think that now, it's probably the right time to start looking. And maybe you just start with a couple. Maybe you manage a couple yourself to start with, see how they do with it, see how the process goes. And if it's something that you want to give up, then maybe you give it up. You give all of it up. But how comfortable you are with the process has a lot to do with it. It's not going to be the same for everyone.
So you're 100% correct. But Jeb, in keeping with tonight's theme of comments being better than the questions, Mrs. Shelton 226 follows up and says, Jeb, you're supposed to flavor the grits to your liking: butter, salt, pepper, etc. So basically what she's saying is, I can tell, Jeb, that you were raised by your father and neither of you knew how to cook because you don't know how to make good grits.
Here's the thing. Everything when I grew up had butter in it, Crisco oil, everything, right? And at that point, for whatever reason, I didn't add it to anything else because it had so much in it that I didn't even know. I think you could add additional butter to things. So as I grew up, they were just bland. Nobody did anything with them. As I've gotten older, I've realized that, yeah, you put butter in them and all that stuff. But now I don't know. I don't use a lot of butter. So that, I don't know. That's where I'm at in my life. I've given up on the grits. Now you give me a biscuit or something like that, I can lather that thing up and go down. But that's a whole different conversation.
The butter, salt, and pepper prompted Jen Lego to pop in here with Cracker Barrel. So apparently, just take everything out of the equation, go to Cracker Barrel, get some grits, and they're pre-buttered, salt, and peppered.
There you go. Here's one for you, Josh. What is the max FHA loan amount in the high cost areas in California for 2 to 4 units? Probably something you're going to have to look up. Is it per unit or categorized into single family and small multifamily? So basically, FHA lends on 4 units or less. They don't go anything above 4 units. Each unit is exactly that. Now, a single family home is completely separate from units, right? They classify, they classify a single family home different than they classify a condo, then they classify multifamily. So a multifamily would be anything that has more than 1 unit on the property. So more than 1 door, if you will, on the property would be multi-unit. So 4 units, Josh, 2 to 4 units goes up to what? 1.6, 1.8 now?
It's even more than that. It's more than 1.6. It's close to 2 million. So give me a second and I'll find.
All right. So we'll come back to that here in a minute. Let's see what we got. Raja,
I got it.
We'll come back to it real quick here.
No, we won't come back because it took me to the wrong year.
Okay, so we'll come back to it in a second. So Raj is asking, what is the process of getting legal opinion for a land purchase? Good question. Probably an attorney. If you're in a different state, I'm not sure how. We don't deal with a lot of land purchases here, quite frankly, here in Southern California. There's not really a lot of land available for purchase by itself. But the legal opinion of it, there's a title report that goes with that piece of land that is going to give you the characteristics of that land, what can be built on it, how it's zoned, all of that good stuff. So if you're looking for that, that's pretty easy to get. Now, any sort of additional opinion legal wise is probably an attorney. I don't know if I'm missing something there on that question, Josh.
No, I think honestly in other countries, they do things differently and legal and attorneys are more involved. So primarily it's going to be your real estate professional augmented by a surveyor, and the title company are going to get you most everything that you need to know on your land purchase.
There you go. Christina Smallhorn, who many of you guys probably know, fellow YouTuber out there, huge following, helping a lot of buyers in this market, first-time home buyers, talking about affordability, a lot of things with regards to housing. So if you don't follow her, check her out. She does a live, I think, every Sunday. So can keep in touch there. And she posts at least once a week on, things to help guide you through that process. Wishing, I'm going to say she's wishing everyone a happy new year. But thank you for the super chat, Christina, and
Jeb,
appreciate you being here.
I have an important question. So for you YouTubers, this is a little YouTuber inside baseball. So does Christina have a large stack of super chat money that she's sitting on and she's just transferring it over to you because she also doesn't share the 805 money with her live streaming partners? Or does she have to come out of her own wallet, or can she just take her bank account of super chats and transfer it over to you?
If she's smart, she's using the super chat money and keeping it for herself and not sharing it with anyone. That's essentially what I try to do here. Anyone that gives money to Josh essentially goes into my account and Josh never sees it. So just, and then I charge Josh to be on here every week too. No, I'm kidding. There's nothing there. I owe Josh dinner. I owe Josh many things. There's bets I owe Josh on for other things non-related to the show. So at some point, Josh will get his money. So don't worry about Josh.
Christina did acknowledge her large stacks of super chats.
Then she says, yeah, right. There was a time here on the show, Josh. I mean, again, I'm going to point out to everyone, we did 48 lives this week. This week, that would be a lot of lives. 48 lives this year. So 4 weeks we took off. That's a lot of lives, people. So during that period of time, there was a lot. At one point, there was super chat money coming in left and right. We had some high aspirations at what to do with it. We haven't. It's just sitting in an account at the moment. But at some point, Josh will probably get his share of it for the knowledge that he's
promises.
Yeah, I'm not promising anything, people.
Yeah.
But anyway, 48 shows this week. This week, this year. So if you haven't hit that thumbs up, guys, hit it. Come on, we're sharing good stuff here for you.
Pandemy's back with a good question.
All right, let's hear
lots of money for Christmas shopping and vacation. Can that cancel my home loan if I didn't touch my credit cards or my savings that I use for my down payment? I close in 2 weeks. Absolutely not. The only way it could is if you had a loan program. Some jumbo loans require reserves. If you have rental properties, some of those loans will require reserves, money above and beyond what you're using. Most of your FHA, VA, conventional loans are not going to require that. So as long as you haven't touched your money for your down payment and closing costs, haven't added to your debts on your credit card, you'll be absolutely fine. So just go nuts every year at Christmas.
So not to pick on pandemic here, but anyone that is in the process of buying a home, you've been pre-approved, you're ready to go, whether you have an offer accepted or you don't, before you go out and spend a lot of money, just have that conversation with the mortgage professional that you're working with to say, hey, listen, if I do this, is there any effects? I mean, you're asking now, which I guess is better than finding out at the close of escrow, but that would have been a really good question prior to doing it just to make sure. But, you know, it's typically if it shows up, like Josh said, credit reports, that sort of thing, with, you know, higher credit card balances, or something that I know Josh sees, lenders see all the time. People going out buying furniture once they go into escrow, they get a new card. They say, you know what, I want to furnish my house with all this furniture. Guess what? Ends up reporting on their credit report at the end of escrow, at the end of the closing, and now that debt has to be counted into the process. Also with loans, I mean with car loans, right? Somebody gets a car loan, even if it's a lease that ends and they go get a new lease, if it's a higher amount, that's going to change your debt to income ratio. So before you make, you know, any rash decisions financially, make sure you're having that conversation.
So have that conversation, but also make sure you are working with an expert. A good segue, Jeb, to the referral link and getting people connected with an expert. My wife is a wholesale account executive, meaning she's one of the lenders that we place loans with. She 2 Christmases ago had a broker who their client called on New Year's Eve, and the dealer was going to make a smoking deal on 2 cars on New Year's Eve that was going to go away on New Year's Day. They call from the dealer, and the broker goes, yeah, you'll be fine. Didn't look at the file, didn't look at anything, and it killed their purchase and the refinance on a rental property. So it is important that you're not working with a kid in the call center. You're working with an expert. There's lots of people who truly are experts that can advise and guide you. But the biggest mistake that I see people making is focusing on, I want to get the absolute lowest interest rate. A lot of the inquiries we get online, on the phone, people say, that's my number one thing, I want to get the absolute lowest interest rate. Having a competitive rate and low fees is incredibly important. Having the absolute lowest or seeking the absolute lowest is almost a guarantee for disaster. We close a couple of loans every month of picking up the pieces of someone that went with someone who wasn't an expert. And the reason for that is their terms were awesome. And you're like, well, you didn't notice this red flag, this red flag. It's important that you get great terms and a good rate, a competitive rate. It's more important that you work with an expert. Like what we talked about earlier, do you want someone from a bank, from a credit union, a direct lender, a broker? You want someone that's an expert. And beyond that, you want someone that has competitive rates and fees and will guide you through this process.
All right, there you go. Bayardo. Are you in Los Angeles? I'm assuming talking to me, Southern California. So Huntington Beach, Orange County, just south of LA. Let's see here. Manny Ferdinand, we are buying a new build. Expected move-in is May 2nd, 2022. Loan officer says I can lock rate 120 days prior to close. Is it best I lock in the rate as soon as possible? So let's use this opportunity here to not only answer that question, but just talk about rates, thoughts over the next couple of weeks with regards to where rates are going. And what are your thoughts on the longer term locks, Josh?
So you talked earlier about Logan's forecast for the next year of somewhere between 2 and 3/8 on the low end, 3.5 on the high end, and that's for your standard conventional loan. And that sounds about right. Sounds about right. And do I have a strong feeling one way or the other of what's most likely to happen? I don't. Normally, when you're looking at the charts and the technical analysis, you have a pretty strong feeling. If I go with my gut, I don't think the economy is going to be nearly as strong as what people are thinking. I think the supply chain issues are going to ease. I think inflation will moderate, still going to be higher than what it has been. But the bond market's done a great job of looking past that and seeing some of the bigger headwind issues that we have. So rates are probably the highest level we've seen in the last year and a half, 2 years, but still excellent. Most of our clients are in the high twos, low threes without paying any points. Government borrowers, well-qualified government borrowers are still 2.5, 2.75%. So rates are high relative to where we hit in the middle of the pandemic. They're awesome historically, like awesome. I mean, we were in late 2018, well-qualified borrowers on the conventional loan were at 4.5, 4.75. They're
Yep.
a full 1.5% below that right now in the worst case scenario. So rates are still really good. So now when we talk about a lock, there's only 3 things that can happen with interest rates, and 2 of them are good. So rates can go down. You don't want to be locked. You'd like to take advantage of it, but we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know when rates are going down. Rates can stay the same, and that's also good for you because versus a 120-day lock, you can get a 30-day lock or a 15-day lock, which is significantly cheaper than a long-term 90 or 120-day lock. So the other thing that can happen is the one bad one is rates can go up. So when would we want to consider a 120-day lock? 120-day locks are expensive. They generally require an upfront fee, which other locks don't. And they are much more expensive, which most people don't pay the additional points for the longer term lock. They just take a higher interest rate. So unless you have some pretty solid knowledge that rates are going to be significantly higher 60 to 90 days from now, I would wait to get inside of the 60-day window for sure, 45-day preferably, and 30 days if possible. There's nothing on the horizon right now that tells me rates are shooting up. Also, nothing that I can see that says, hey, rates are going to drop. So for most of our clients, if they're calling to refinance today, we're going to close that in 21 days. We're just going to lock it, take the stress out of the equation. If you have a 30-day closing on your purchase, we talked about the mortgage and the finance can be one of the most stressful parts of a purchase transaction. Let's lock it and take that stress out of the equation, unless we're looking at the technicals and see a strong reason why we think rates might drop during your escrow period. So in your situation, 120 days, I wouldn't be locking at that time frame unless something changes between now and you getting to the 120-day point that we think rates are shooting up. And I don't expect that to happen.
There you go. H. Gray is asking a question about student loan payments and DTI calculations based on COVID forbearance. We did answer that question at the beginning of the video, the live, in a lot of detail. Josh answered it, but I think the easy answer here is that it is still 0.5% for the IBR payment in DTI calculation. Is that right, Josh?
Yes, and that was
Yes.
a big improvement for us. At some point here in 2021, they made that change. They were the last holdout sticking to 1%. And we see numbers. I talked to a client today. Wife had $347,000 of student loans. 1% on that will eat into your qualifications. So 0.5% is a lot better. It may not be ideal, especially for those of you on an IBR. For her $347,000 loan was $1,100 on an IBR payment. So if they were using FHA financing, we'd still be at like $1,700, $1,800 qualifying payment, which is $600 higher than her IBR payment. But it is what it is.
There you go. Couple thing here. BookTube Goddess just got accepted on my house bid and now suddenly have cold feet. How do you deal with cold feet? Put socks on them.
Put on boots.
That's such a dad joke.
Foot warmers.
No. It's normal, right? It is normal to have some sort of buyer's remorse when buying a home. It's a large purchase financially. You're taking money out of a savings, checking, cash, whatever it is, coming up with money to put down on a property. That's a big deal. It's a big investment. It's something you're locked into. It is normal to have some sort of remorse. So how do you deal with it? that's, it's tough, right? It's going to be a little bit different for each person, but just again, make sure that you're not making emotional decisions. It's make sure you're making logic-based decisions. Are you financially secure? Do you have money in the bank? Are you looking at a longer term time horizon? Are you comfortable with the monthly payment? Job security, those things all matter. Outside of that, you have to have housing, right? So, make sure you're buying in the right location, that you're not sacrificing things on the property, with your non-negotiables, if you will. It's hard to say outside of that, whether or not it's the right decision. It's going to be to each his own. But again, you can only control the things that you can control, and you can't worry about the other things. So as long as you've, kind of done your homework, then you're probably in good shape. It's normal to have those thoughts. 25 years of sweet love. Not sweat, sweet love and tears is back. Just sold and walked with $150,000. So congrats on that.
I follow up. Sell
now
and
what?
do what? What are you doing with the 150,000? Are we buying crypto? Are we buying a mansion? What are we doing?
Good question. They said, yeah, thanks.
We're doing it all.
So, Josh, here's a question, right? We're gonna play other side of the coin here. Invest. They said they're gonna buy Bitcoin. No idea. They didn't say that. I just made that up. Theo says, I heard bad things about online lenders. Recently worked with cash call, no closing cost. Did a cash out refi on an investment property, pulled $85,000 out, got an 8.5. That would be a really crappy loan. Got a 3.5, no points. Why do they get a bad rap? So why do online lenders get a bad rap when occasionally a sweet deal comes out of it?
Depending on interest rate or depending on credit score, 3.5 is either an average interest rate or a really bad interest rate. That's one reason.
On an investment property, cash out?
Again, credit score, you got to look at it all and the timing of everything. So why do call center lenders get a bad rap? Because what they do is monstrous mass market advertising, Google AdWords, radio, TV, billboards, and they funnel those to kids in the call center that don't know anything about anything. So your best case scenario is your loan is easy enough to do that they figure out how to do it and you get decent terms on it. There are actually a couple of these big call center operations that lose shit tons of money every year, and they give really good terms on their loans. And again, if your loan is easy enough, they'll get it done and you get really good terms. Those are your best outcomes. More often than not, what happens is the large call center lenders will tell you you don't qualify, and it could be because of an overlay that they have. It could be a misunderstanding on their part of not knowing the guidelines. Like I said, a couple times a month, we do about 20, 25 loans a month. And in that process, we're going to do a couple of loans where a call center lender shit the bed and we're picking up the pieces and putting it back together. And we're going to do another 2 or 3 where a call center lender told someone they don't qualify when they obviously do because they just don't know the guidelines. So that's the bigger picture. You're dealing with a kid in the call center that's getting paid probably $100 for your loan. And you go, oh, great, I'm saving money. There's not a big broker fee. No, you're not saving money. The difference goes to paying for all the advertising that makes the leads come into the call center. So by all means, if you feel that that's an option or an alternative you want to pursue, shop with them. Check with the broker, check with a local direct lender, check with the call center lender. And if you don't have a monstrously qualitatively different phone call with the local expert versus the kid in the call center, go with the kid in the call center. And I've actually had this situation also. I've had clients, I've got a guy right now that he makes $350,000 a year, salary, W-2, one property, 800 credit score. And he says, well, here's the number from the call center. And he called one of those ones that has spectacularly low interest rates. And I looked at it and I go, your loan's easy enough. Any idiot kid who's been doing loans for 2 weeks will be able to figure out how to do your loan. Go ahead and do it. He respected that answer and we came to an agreement and we did the loan at really good terms for him. But there is a small minority of people that their loans are easy enough that even a kid in a call center can't screw it up. But what I will say, most of those call centers are giving you very average terms. The biggest, most gigantic call center lender on the planet in Michigan that you see their commercials 17 times a day, their terms are awful. So you're dealing with a kid in Michigan who doesn't own a home, has been doing loans for 12 weeks, and is going to give you bad terms on top of that. So that's your worst case scenario. Actually, your worst case scenario is there's another big call center that caters to veterans and has guidelines way above and beyond what VA has. And then we'll tell veterans, no, you don't qualify. The VA guidelines are this, when it's actually their overlay guidelines, such as requiring a minimum 640 credit score, a maximum 45% debt to income ratio. So those are the downsides to it. But again, bottom line, if you have a really easy loan and you get to the right call center, you might get a great deal. More likely, you're going to get bad advice and a really average deal.
And you know what you don't get if you go to the call center? You don't get a wreath at Christmas from Josh.
No,
if you close a loan, you get a nice live wreath to put on your front door. Think the guy at the call center is going to send you that, people? Nope, not. Just keep that in mind. You want a wreath for Christmas?
They're just going to buy more TV commercials, not buy you a wreath.
Hey, people, if you're watching, hit the thumbs up. We're at 101 likes at the moment. There's 156 of you on here. So there's at least 55 people on here that haven't hit it. This is the 48th episode of the year. Come on, people. Help me out here. That's all I ask. I'm not asking for anything other than that. And if you want to get connected to a pro, I won't hit the mic again. There is a link in the description below where you can get connected to a real estate agent or a mortgage professional. All these people I know, like, trust, they can guide you in the process. Let's see here. So we are coming up, what's an hour and 40 something minutes so far. Here's a question from BookTube Goddess that I think is a good one as well. Asking about waiving inspection because it went through automated underwriting. So my lender's waiving inspection because of automated underwriting system. Is that common? So I think what you probably are looking at is waiving the appraisal, not the inspection of the property. So it's an appraisal inspection. Is that normal? It is on properties that meet certain guidelines. So high credit scores, I think you need at least 20% down. The loan amount has to be, or the purchase price has to be under $1 million. There's some other factors in there, lower debt to income ratio. And I think, if the property looks like in their automated system, whether, the what you're paying for that property is realistic based on the valuation that they're using, then they don't require one. So in that case, it allows you, saves you some money for one, could be upwards of $1,000 in some markets at the moment based on turn times and that sort of thing on an appraisal.
We had an $1,150 appraisal.
Yeah. So save you some money, and also assures that you're not going to have an issue with the appraisal. So good stuff. Someone mentioned a moment ago, and I want to plug this. I don't normally plug other videos, but make between 55, 60K a year going to use FHA. I'm lost. So I did a video a couple weeks ago on loan requirements for FHA. That's a good start if you're just starting the process of FHA. So check out that video. Also, putting a video out this Friday that is going to talk about closing costs with regards to FHA. Now, closing costs in addition to down payment, basically what you need to bring in order to close on an FHA loan. So if you're just starting the process, both really good videos to check out to give you a lot of insight on FHA, what to expect, with regards to costs, fees, all that good stuff, as well as requirements needed in order to qualify. So that'll post on Friday sometime. All right, Josh, we're at that point in the show. I don't think we have a lot of questions here, but Claudia has a comment. Favorite housing advisor. I'm going to take it. She's talking about me. Just going to take that.
Does Claudia know you don't know how to make grits?
I don't know. Listen, I don't like them. Why are we talking about grits, bro?
We already learned you don't know how to make them right. If you made them right, you would like them.
Get out of here. So while we're here, we're at the point in the show. I bought a Peloton. Anyone care? I bought a Peloton. I'm on there if you guys want to.
What's your Peloton username? I want to see how many of the followers here you get to jump on and show you what's up and double your power output.
Dude, HB Realtor is my Peloton name. So let me tell you how this came about. So years ago, I cycled. I did triathlons, did that whole thing, gave it up because I absolutely hate the bike. And I didn't like riding on the roads because I'd be cycling down the road and I would look over and there'd be some idiot on their phone about 3 feet from me. And I thought, you know what? I'm not looking to lose my life on a bike. So I'm kind of stopping this whole thing. Then I injured my back about 8 months ago. Not to the point where I'm not that back issue problem, or major issues in my back, but enough to keep me from doing what I want to do. So I thought, hey, I was showing a property to some clients a couple months back. They had a Peloton. I asked them how it was. They were like, you know what? We don't really use it. We've only used it like 4 or 5 times. They said they would sell it. So the other day, my wife and I were talking Peloton, blah, blah, blah. I reach out to them. They're willing to sell it. I go buy it. I now own a Peloton. So in the last 10 days, I've ridden on this thing 9 days, people. I'm to the point now where I'm not sure I really want a Peloton anymore. It's starting to hurt. But hey,
Jeb,
that's where I'm at.
Here's the more important question.
Yep.
In the last 10 days, how many times have you ridden the awesome rower that your favorite lender got you and your family?
That hurts my back. That hurts the crease closing. It's my hips. It's not my back. It is my hips. That's why I stopped. So this allows me to sit up, doesn't hurt my back. Anyway, long story. I'm sure sweat, love, and tears cycles on Peloton, because sweat, love, and tears, that sounds like a Peloton name.
Look up 25 years of sweat, love, and tears and see if you can find them, and you guys can like race and stuff.
I don't know. What I can tell you is that I feel like I'm a pretty fit person overall, and I go into these classes, and let's just say hypothetically on a pre-recorded class, there's 40 people in there, and I feel like I'm doing pretty good. I'm in like the top, say 20% of the people in there. And then I look at the people that are above me, and they're like doubling my output. I mean, dude, I don't know what the hell is going on. I think my computer's broken, bro. I'm on my Peloton. People are making me, like, putting me to shame on this thing. So now, because I'm competitive, this is I'm attacking this thing. So I'm going to go home and Peloton tonight. I'm actually not. I'm going to go home and I'm going to eat wings.
11 days.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm lying. But anyway, let's see here. Jennifer is telling me that my muscles adjusting. That is my muscles adjusting. Maybe make sure I'm stretching. Let's see. That's the nurse in her. She's trying to take care of me, people. We don't have any questions, people. So I'm just rambling here.
I'm going to share something. So you guys know, we know I had shoulder replacement 6 weeks ago. So I'm back in Washington to hang out with the relatives and to have my 6-week checkup, which went really well. But they're in Olympia, Washington, which is normally about an hour and 15-minute drive into Seattle to see my doctor. This was what we got to walk out to the other morning. This doesn't happen in Seattle. So that was 8 inches of snow. And we got to leave at 7 o'clock in the morning and go out to the doctor in Seattle, which took a little over 2 hours and 20 minutes. And then the drive home took about 3.5, because much like Californians driving in rain, Seattleites don't know how to drive in snow. So we had about 3 accidents to go past on the way back home. So I will be happy to get back to the complainers in Huntington Beach that are whining about 50-degree temperatures.
Dude, it's rained.
This stuff.
It's raining, bro. It's rained more in the last 2 weeks than it has in the entire year.
I am praying for rain, for it to warm up and start raining so we can get on the roads and get home and not have to fight snow for half the drive till we get to Jennifer Beeston land in Sacramento.
No, it's going to take you like 10 years to get home, bro.
Exactly.
All right. Let's see here. People, we're at 150. It's almost New Year's. We're gonna say our goodbyes now. I'm gonna say thank you guys for supporting me all year long. I do appreciate it. I know we joke around a lot on here, but I am grateful for the opportunity to have these conversations, to talk to you guys, and share what I know about housing to help you guys hopefully find success in the market. Also, that's one reason that we have Josh on here every week, an expert in mortgage lending, expert on all things finance, if you will, and share some knowledge. So I appreciate you being here as well, Josh. Thank you guys. It's been a good ride. We're going to continue to do it every Wednesday at 5 p.m. If you found any value, hit the thumbs up. Josh, final words for the year. This is 2021, bro. It went by quick.
No, was just thinking about it today and thinking in terms of the thought of people saying, don't jump in, fear of missing out. You'll regret it. So we talk about it. Don't jump into the housing market at a level that you're not comfortable with, at a price point, at a housing payment you're not comfortable with. But big publication, The Atlantic, ran an article about 6 months ago that said, "Don't buy now, wait for a better entry point in 2022." That one has not aged well. From what we're seeing, waiting is not really going to help. So make sure you have a longer term time horizon. Make sure you are on solid financial footing, employment footing, you have some reserves. And as soon as life allows you to get to that point, become a homeowner and work with expert advisors to make sure you're doing it in a smart way, because nothing will have a bigger impact on your financial health over the long haul besides a solid financial footing for home ownership.
I think that's well said. And there's a lot of people that are supposed to come troll me this year based on comments I said last year. They told me I'm going to come get you next year when housing is in the toilet. So I'm actually looking forward to 2022 so I can have these conversations with all of these people that are proving me wrong. That's it, guys. Happy New Year. Appreciate you. We'll see you next year. Next year. It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Adios.
See you
Thanks,
next
Josh.
year.
All right, brother.